Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Coach Krisler's Convos. If you are new here, this is a place where we just have conversations with folks about their health journey and how they've used functional medicine along the way. So today I am joined by Debbie, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. So Debbie, thank you so much for being here with me today. If you could just tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Hi, well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm Debbie, and I am a functional medicine health coach, like Krisler, and I live in the UK, so I'm on a little island in between France and England called Jersey. And I've lived here all my life. It's only a small little island, but absolutely beautiful. Loads and loads of beaches. So it's where I've always stayed.
Awesome.
So I discovered functional medicine when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. I'd always had an interest in nutrition from about my early 30s. I had an interest in nutrition and, getting myself to be as healthy as I could be. But it stuck to the nutrition and the exercise. There was nothing else in that remit, really.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say was your draw towards nutrition? What was the thing that kind of really made you think, oh, food and exercise are really the things that I want to focus on?
Well, I'd always quite enjoyed exercise. And then I just found I was feeling really, really tired all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the personal trainer I used, his partner had done a nutrition qualification along with her personal training. So I went and saw her and, filled out the food journal as you do. And the first thing she said to me is, I can see exactly why you're tired. So it kind of developed from there. And then I bought a few books on nutrition and things like that. And I developed a real interest in it and being in the best health I could be.
Mm-hmm.
But it was literally only those two pillars, the health, the food and the exercise. Nothing else kind of came into it.
Yeah.
So I was always, from my early 30s, quite healthy. And then I had my two children and it wasn't quite as healthy as it was, although pretty healthy, but not as quite as healthy. It's kind of slipped a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it really slipped when I hit menopause. So perimenopause started very quickly after the death of my mum. I think the shock and the stress brought that on because everything was functioning quite normally beforehand. And it hit me like a truck. I literally didn't know what had hit me. I'd gone from, having loads of energy and doing everything at 100 miles an hour to being this person that was like dripping in sweat everywhere and forgetting everything. And it was the forgetting everything that was driving me the most mad and being really tired. And I Googled myself stupid. So I knew what I should be doing. I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I went through that it was very much tied in with grief and all that kind of thing. So I very much kind of like went through that and, was doing the coffee with the sugar and things like that. And then one of my daughters one day had to go to the doctor on a Saturday for an unscheduled appointment, and it was a free clinic. So there was no appointment. And it was the day of her birthday party. So we had to make up 7 beds and bake a cake and ice a cake and all that kind of thing. So anyway, then we raced into the doctor's, already late because she'd misunderstood the time I wanted to leave. Gets there, we're like number 3 in the queue. So just before our appointment, she says to me, I want to go to the toilet. I'll be very, very quick. So she wasn't. So we missed our appointment. So of course I was like steam coming out of my ears by this point by the time I got in the doctor's surgery. And he was like, right, okay. So he dealt with what Charlotte said he was. And then he was like, oh, we haven't taken your blood pressure for a while. I was like, really? I've got 7 kids coming. I've got a cake to bake and ice, and you're talking to me about, So I was like, right, here you go, something like that. And he took it and went, oh, that's really high. Oh, blimey. He was like, oh, it was quite high in 2008, wasn't it? And I was like, I was pregnant in 2008. If you check your records. And he was like, oh, just look at that picture and take a few deep breaths and we'll take it again. Oh, that's still quite high. And I said to him, are you sure this isn't menopause related? And he went, no. No, definitely not menopause related. I was like, oh, okay then. And I'm very much into intuition and my gut feeling. And I was like, there's something not quite right about this. So I said, anyway, come back next week, sit in the doctor's surgery for half an hour and just read your book and, have a nice relax. And I just thought, that's a really stupid thing to say. Firstly, what makes you think I've got half an hour? You silly man. So sit in your And obviously I'm going to get here feeling stressed about it anyway. So I did go back and I was still stressed and it was higher, and then they wouldn't let me leave. And then I had to see another doctor. And his opinion is that it was hereditary. 9 times out of 10, it was hereditary. There was not a lot I could do, bar take blood pressure pills, go off and get yourself a monitor from the clinic, blah, blah, blah. And I said, are you sure this is No, not menopause. So that was kind of what everything I was getting back.
Yeah. It's interesting because you were saying, that you had your experience with exercise and that was something that you enjoyed doing. And, then you felt tired. And so you learned a little bit and you started to delve into the nutrition piece and learning more. And then, you had your children, which definitely has an effect on women's bodies. And yet everything seemed pretty normal at that point. And then you moved into menopause, and that's when things really seemed to come off the rails. And, I'm wondering how, with raising your children, or at least the time period between, birth and when you hit menopause, were there any times where you did feel off, where you thought, I'm really tired, or, I seem to have more headaches this week than I had in the past, or whatever it was? Was there any indication at that point that things weren't totally normal or quite right?
No, I just was going through what I thought was menopause, and because I didn't really have any issues with my mood and depression and things like that, my mood was normally, I was okay. It was just the hot flushes and the tiredness and the brain fog.
Mm-hmm.
I just I didn't take anything for it. I just took all my, regular herbal supplements and things like that, and and just like, well, this is what it is. I'm just going to work through it. But as far as the blood pressure,
so nothing in the past, before menopause, like after having your kids, just living life during that time, being a mom, was there ever a time when anything seemed off or wasn't quite right, or maybe you were extra tired?
No, I just think it was being an older mum and having my kids older and just being tired.
Mm-hmm.
It's mum life, isn't it, when they're younger? So no, I felt completely fine. So when I went to that doctor, it was a real shock. I was like, I've never had a high blood pressure in my life. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So with that sort of opinion, I phoned my acupuncturist and said to her, because I was having acupuncture to help with the perimenopause symptoms. And I said, I've just been diagnosed with high blood pressure. I've never had high blood. Is this normal in menopause? She went, yes, it's very normal in menopause. And I said to her, and does it go back to normal afterwards? And she said, that depends on how you live your life. And I was like, well, that was it. That's all she needed to say to me.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. That was me off. So I cleaned up my diet as much as I could. I increased my exercise because it had gone a bit pear-shaped during perimenopause. Having hot flushes during a spinning class just wasn't working for me. So I kind of stopped going a bit. So I also had a friend who was very into meditation and things like that. So she said, this is what you need to be doing. And I was like, yeah, 40 it. Don't want to be doing that. Haven't got time to be sitting down meditating. And so actually I did take it on board and I did do it. And it was just a turning point, really, along with the other factors that are involved in reducing your high blood pressure. So yeah. I did seek out a functional medicine practitioner as well, and I went to see her and I chatted a lot through with her, and she was of the opinion that the 120/80 isn't actually normal for everybody.
Yeah.
Slightly might be my normal, but actually she wasn't worried about my health, and she gave me some other tips and the heart math and things like that. But I bought the little gadget and did that for a while, and so that's kind of where I am and how I discovered functional medicine.
So, what's interesting is several times throughout what you've shared in terms of kind of sharing your story is you mentioned that you didn't have time. I don't have time to sit in your doctor's office. I don't have time to wait for, my daughter to go to the bathroom, or I don't have time for this or that. When meditation was suggested, I don't have time for that. So, what do you think was the was your expectation regarding the time that was needed to meditate or eat better or wait for the doctor? Like, why do you think time was such an issue, or maybe so in the forefront of your mind?
That's a very good question. I think it's because it's actually then indulging yourself in that time, isn't it? So as a mum, you're very much into the work, busy. You've got to keep all the balls in the air, and all the fruit bowl's got to be filled, and this has got to be done. And I suppose I didn't actually in those days give myself any time. So, and that's where things completely changed for me, is that now, yeah, if I want an afternoon nap, I will have one. I will lie down. It's about boundaries and things like that. But then my children are older now. When they're younger, it's really hard to find any me time.
Yeah. So you mentioned cleaning up your diet even more than you had in the past. So what were some things that you changed or added, took out? What did you implement regarding your diet?
What I did is I took out as many of the things that I added in that I didn't need to. So things like olives and sun-dried tomatoes and all the stuff that I thought, because obviously they go on and on about salt, which now I've realized sometimes actually isn't an issue if you're not eating processed foods. But that was the initial thing that I discovered since doing the functional medicine health coach training. Obviously, I have better knowledge than that now. So I made sure everything, I cut out all the sugar and all, and the coffee with the sugars and things like that. All of that went. So it's including as many fruit and vegetables as I possibly could. Growing a lot more myself that I used to enjoy when I had more time. So that was that part of the diet, making sure I ate all the essential fats, drank plenty of water, quality proteins, that kind of thing. So that was my diet, just literally taking out all the sneaky chocolate, the odd biscuit, that kind of thing that you think doesn't matter until you realize actually how much you're doing it. So that's what happened with the diet.
Yeah.
And
then, what you just said there is so important. It sneaks in.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much you actually are taking in, how much you're actually eating. And, you and I both know through this training that we've done is that, sometimes we have our clients keep a journal of their food intake, because they may say, oh, well, I don't really eat fast food that much, or I don't really eat processed food, or, I don't really eat that much sugar, or whatever it is. And then when you actually sit down and intentionally think about that and write it out, it makes it a lot clearer, right? That, those things did kind of sneak in, and you have a bit more self-awareness, and you discover, okay, I do eat those foods more than I thought, or I do have a little bit of extra chocolate more than I thought, or whatever it is, right? So I think what you said is really, really important for people to take note of.
Yeah. I mean, and even I noticed when I do it in the school summer break and we're away on holiday, the odd ice cream will creep in and the odd this will creep in. And then by September, I've got a nice little kangaroo pouch. So then I need to go on a slightly stricter regime and cut it all out, because it's just easy for it to happen. It's easy to fall into those sort of having a bit here and a bit there. And
Yeah. So I'm curious about your interaction with the functional medicine doctor and how it was different than the conventional medicine doctors you had seen in the past.
It was completely different. She did give me the DASH diet to do, which was probably like where they have the breads and the cereals, that sort of something I just wouldn't eat anyway. So I kind of ignored that and did my own thing. She did show me the heart math gadget that I did use, so to monitor your heart rate variability. How did it differ? Well, she knew there was no way I was popping blood pressure pills, because that's what the conventional doctor had said to me. I've been on blood pressure pills since I was 40. And I thought, well, that's nice, really, for you. well, that's not going to be my life. I'm not having that, because even though I was 50, I actually considered that quite young at that point. I was like, well, this is something like 70, 80-year-olds have to take, not somebody in their 50s. And it's certainly not going to be me. So she knew straight away that there was no way I was taking medication. So we needed to go down an alternative route. So it was the diet, the heart math, the bringing the heart rate down. She introduced me to vagus nerve stimulation as well. And then I just actually found myself a personal trainer because I knew that I got a little bit unfit, and I was doing lots of walking and things like that, but actually walking up the hills, I found I was getting a little bit out of breath. So I got myself a personal trainer and decided I wanted to work on that a bit as well. So she really did help me. She listened, and that was the difference. So instead of this is what you've got, this is what you need to do, there's nothing you can do apart from take your pills. There was none of that. It was actually listening to what I wanted, how I felt, and then giving the advice that was appropriate for how I wanted to deal with this.
Yeah. So it sounds more conversational, where you get to talk a lot, right? Typically, when we go to the doctor, they ask us maybe a few questions. We say, we give the answers very quickly. They tell us what we're supposed to do, and then off and done, and that's it. But when you go to a functional medicine practitioner, it's a lot more time. You have a lot more time to express yourself, to share, like you said, how you're feeling, what's going on. It's not just what's going on right now, but what's been going on, right? What's been happening 3 months ago, 3 years ago, 30 years ago, right? You get to have that whole conversation, and they're looking at you as a whole person with a very long timeline versus, the past week or two of, your symptoms or what have you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a completely different thing. We start with looking, in functional medicine at your history, at your parents' history, and any events that have gone on in your life. I mean, for me, it was definitely related to grief, menopause, and then the high blood pressure. You could see that straight away. And I knew straight away when my menopause started so early that it was down to having lost my mum and the shock of that, because it was unexpected. So also the difference with functional medicine as well is that it's listening to the person, and that person is an expert in their own life. And that person knows their own body far better than a conventional doctor or a functional medicine doctor. So whilst we're looking for their advice as well, we do have to also listen to our own bodies and what our own body is telling us.
Yeah.
That is really important, and that's often not the case. You just, people are right, this is your body, this is how it works, but actually hang on a minute, that's, for me, that doesn't work like that. This won't suit me, this won't suit my lifestyle. So, and that's the difference. It's the listening and the personalizing it.
Yeah. There are general principles that apply to everyone. However, even some of those things can be or need to be personalized to the individual. When you say, everybody should eat whole foods, absolutely, right? Everybody should eat whole foods. However, if somebody has an allergy or a food sensitivity, then there may be a particular whole food that they need to hold back on because that doesn't work for their body. So you're absolutely right that, this personalized approach is so beneficial to each individual.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about something you've mentioned with your mom and her passing, and I'm so sorry to hear that, because yes, it is a stressor, and it's a terrible thing to have to walk through. I don't think that people realize how much stress affects us, and how, when we experience these traumatic events, that it really does have an effect on our physical body. Would you say that when it happened, you were aware of that, or do you think it was later that you became more aware of how much it affected you?
Ooh, it's 10 years ago, so I've really got to give it some good thought now. Um, how stressed was I? I think I'm a very emotional person, so I will just deal with my emotions as they come. So I don't bury anything. It just, and I just cried. I cried a lot. There was a lot of anger there directed at the doctors and things like that. Not to actually, often you get angry with the person that's gone. I was angry with the doctors. But I had 2 small children to deal with. So, one was 4, one was 7. So I had to get on with it to a certain degree whilst trying to grieve and look after my stepdad. And, that's a good question. I'm really going to think about that now. Did I think it manifest. I think I probably did park a lot of it because I had to, although I was, very emotional as well. So I think that's how it manifested itself further down the line, is suddenly going from having a regular cycle to then having, oh, hang on a minute, I haven't had a period. One horrible moment, I thought I was pregnant again. I was like, oh my God, no. So then then the following year, that's when I was waking up. I had a cold in the January, and I was waking up in the night feeling really hot. And then I realized that the cold had stopped and I was better. And these hot moments were still carrying on. I thought, hang on a minute. So I realized, and I did go to the doctor, and the blood test he took did actually show that I was in perimenopause. So, but yeah, that's where I think that stress, that's a massive trauma, isn't it? A grief is a massive trauma. So I think it did manifest itself further down the line. But as I said, I had 2 young children. I had to just keep on keeping on. And to a certain degree, they really helped.
Yeah, sometimes when we have so many priorities in our lives, so many important things that we're dealing with, when those traumas happen, we kind of push through and just do what we have to do in order to kind of keep moving forward. And maybe later on down the road, maybe it's a month, maybe it's a year, who knows, it could be 10 years. Then it's like something, kind of the wheels fall off the wagon. And that's really when things kind of start to really hit us. So I was just curious, because all of us have different experiences. Many of us have gone through a loss of some sort, and it can affect us and manifest in different ways. Yeah. So you've mentioned the hot flashes and the brain fog. What else were you experiencing? What other symptoms were you experiencing?
The tiredness. It was really those main 3, really. And just craving the sugar all the time, because I was tired. I was then craving the sugar. I was then eating the sugar, which then got me into the sugar ups and downs and cycles. So it was mainly those. Luckily, I didn't have any sort of depression or mood effects or anything like that. So I think when you have that, then you need to start doing something about it. Whereas for me, because I could cope with the hot flushes, I could cope with the being a bit ditzy, and I just decided just to get on with it and deal with it as it was.
Yeah.
There was one instance where we decided we were going on a skiing holiday, and we'd spent the whole evening prior to me organizing exactly what we needed to go, who we were taking with us, what we needed to hire, what we could take ourselves, what we needed to buy for the children, and then I had to phone up the company the next day that we were booking through and get this all booked and this all sorted. So about 11 o'clock the next day, my husband phoned me and said, "You spoken with a skiing company?" I'm like, "Oh, completely forgot, just went completely out of my head." We spent like 2 hours the night before, and that was my job for the day, completely gone, just gone. And it's just little instances like that. But I had a friend who has an auto start car, so she doesn't need the key to start it. Went into the supermarket, came back out and thought, "Oh, some silly fools left their car running. Oh, it's mine."
Oh my gosh.
So we used to share, we were going through it at the same time. So we used to share stories like that and just laugh and joke about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely nice to have somebody who you can relate to,
Yeah.
that's going through similar things. When my first child was born, I had several friends who had kids born within about a 6-week period. So we all were new moms, all up late or up in the middle of the night. And so we would be texting each other and asking each other questions. And it was so nice to have somebody else who knew exactly how I was feeling. They were exhausted, they were feeding in the middle of the night, those types of things. So that is nice to have a friend who knows, and can kind of empathize with your situation.
Yeah. And now a lot of my school mum friends are, 5, potentially 10 years younger than me. So they're all starting to go through it. And I'll say something to them and they're like, oh my God, I can't remember. Or I'll say, oh, no, you said you were doing that. Oh, did I? And they're just like, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm just laughing because they used to laugh at me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm seeing them go through it. And I'm like, well, don't you remember when I said this or I did that? And you all thought I was completely balmy. So, just let you know, you do come out the other side, and actually you come out stronger and better and more focused.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's some sort of maturity goes on when you do go through it. So it's quite funny to see well, not funny, I shouldn't say funny. It's quite interesting to see other people now going through it, because then I've got that ability to reassure them that, it does get better.
Yes, there is hope. It does get better.
There
Yeah.
is hope.
And that is one of the cool things about functional medicine is no matter what, there are areas to investigate. There's avenues that you can still look at. And, even if you make a change and things start to improve, there's other things that you can still do. And even, with your own personal story, you mentioned nutrition, you mentioned exercise, you mentioned meditation, and, there's multiple things that you've done personally, and that, everybody can give a try
Mhm.
and see what works
Yeah,
for them.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to go as far as meditation. You can go for a nice walk in nature,
Mm-hmm.
get the benefits of the fractals in nature, which brings your body out of fight or flight and straight into relaxation mode, and people see the meditation as sitting on a rock, in lotus position, and it's all a bit woo-woo, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be sitting in a park, just
Mm-hmm.
looking at the leaves and the trees rustling. It can be down at the beach, just listening to the waves. It can be whatever you want it to be. You don't have to be sat in the lotus position with your headphones plugged in, having a guided meditation. It can be whatever makes you feel really comfortable and relaxed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is the beautiful thing about what we do as coaches, because, I don't know what you've seen or how people come to you, but a lot of times people come to me and they say, what should I do? And I'm like, well, let's have a conversation about what's working for you, what's not working for you, what you like, what you
Mhm.
don't like. Because if you don't like it, you're not going to do it, or there's very little chance that you'll remain consistent with it, even if you start. So, you know, like you said, even with something like meditation, again, that's personalized. For some
Mhm.
people, prayer is important, and that works for them, and that's going to be their time of meditation. For some people, they need music. Other people, music would distract them. So again, as coaches, we get to talk with people about those things and help them discover what's going to work, what's going to be consistent for them over the long term.
Exactly. And what they can do, what they feel that they can achieve. You get very pushed into all these SMART goals, particularly at the beginning of the year. You have people going, right, okay, it's January, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And they go off and they try it all at once. And the difference with working with a coach is that actually we start small, don't we? We focus on one item. If you're not eating any vegetables, suddenly to try and eat a plate full of vegetables is going to be quite difficult. Let's introduce one vegetable per week. Anybody can do something like that. Or if you're needing to do some exercise, does it have to start with being a gym bunny? No, absolutely doesn't. Walking is an amazing, really underrated form of exercise. you can do 1,000 steps in 15 minutes, which is pretty amazing, isn't it? So start with walking, start small, build yourself up and be consistent so that you know that that's going to give you the feel-good factor that is going to then encourage you, and you'll snowball on. And it's like when people start to exercise and they start to look at their diets, and you can see all these little changes happening, and it's just a wonderful thing to watch.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So something you mentioned that I'm curious about is vagus nerve stimulation. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the vagus nerve runs from the brain right into the gut. And there's different ways of stimulating the vagus nerve so that it brings you out of fight or flight and back into relaxation. So there was a few things that I looked at. One of them was cold water therapy. So I started taking not fully cold showers, and I still don't do fully cold showers because I'm too much of a wimp. So I'll have a shower, and then for the last minute, and I will count myself a minute, I then turn the water to cold. So there was vagus nerve stimulation, singing and humming. Now, nobody wants to hear me sing, honestly, trust me, it's awful. So that's what I tended to avoid. I even embarrassed hearing my own voice. So singing I didn't really do. Meditation was another one, bring yourself out of the fight or flight. So there's various different ways you can stimulate the vagus nerve, and have the benefits of that relaxation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing those things. Okay, so now that you've been through all of this, you've had all of this formalized training, but also, just personal knowledge that you've collected over your experience and through reading and such. Tell us about Debbie today. How is Debbie today different than in those years, in those earlier years?
It's understanding my body more,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what my body needs, not pushing myself like I used to push. Now I will go, do you know what, chaps? I need 15 minutes just to sit down and just to drink my drink, and then I'll deal with it. So there's lots more boundaries in place than there ever was before. There's lots more listening to my body, and certainly lots more listening to my intuition, because my intuition in that doctor's surgery was telling me something wasn't quite right. And what they wanted for me wasn't consistent with how I wanted to live. So it's now I live my life a lot more in touch with my values and things that are important to me. And for example, I was just invited to go on somebody's 50th party to Liverpool in England, and it was a big girls' bash with every minute of the day packed out, and lots of alcohol drinking, and I was just like, I can't do that. If it involves yoga and meditation, I'll be there like a shot. But do you know what? That's just actually not for me. So in this instance, happy birthday, but I'm not coming. So there's a lot of different aspects to me now. And now I eat mostly healthily, but I do allow myself a treat. So, whereas people say apply the 80-20 rule, I prefer it to be 90-10. So if I do want a gin and tonic, I'll have a gin and tonic. If I do want an ice cream one Saturday night, I'll have an ice cream one Saturday night. But it's not the norm. So I keep my diet as clean as possible. And I'm 56 now, so you get to the age where people are starting to really not be healthy, and you see people potentially passing away, and you're like, that's not going to be me. Or I might see an elderly person that's struggling to walk, or struggling with their health and swollen ankles, and I'm like, I don't want that for me. I don't want that as my future.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking after myself as much as I can so that I can live my best life for as long as I can.
Yes, that's awesome. That, we talk so much about living a long time, but who wants to live a long time in a sickly state?
Yeah,
right? So we want our health span to match our lifespan as closely as possible. And it sounds like you are really going after it and doing the things that work for you. And, you've set those boundaries. You are true to those boundaries. And that's really working well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for a fact that if I have an hour's PT session, I'm going to be goosed and I'll be craving chocolate and sugar in the afternoon. So I don't do that. I'll do half an hour instead now. Instead of trying to run 6 miles, I'll go for a 3.5 mile run. That's all I do, because I know that I will enjoy anymore. I won't enjoy it, and it will I'll be tired and craving the sugar. And that's what happens if I don't look after myself. By the afternoons, I'm in the chocolate. So it's understanding your body, understanding what works for it and what doesn't work for it. And that's now the stage that I'm at in my life. Instead of trying to make my body do things it doesn't want to do. I mean, my husband runs he's just done triathlons, he runs marathons. I'm just like, that's great for you, but that sort of exercise just doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm impressed with him on 26 miles. Personally, I wouldn't even walk 26 miles, but it's understanding your body and knowing how far you can push it. And I know that I can't push mine too hard and I have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so many people just go through life on the hamster wheel and the treadmill and carry on and on and on, and they're completely out of tune with their bodies. They don't understand how their body works or what feeds their soul, and they just carry on like that, and then they just want to either collapse one day. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that you have. I loved hearing your story, and I know everybody that listens to this episode is going to take away some really good nuggets. So if people want to connect with you, how can they reach you? How can they maybe follow you on social media or whatever you'd like to share?
Well, LinkedIn is just my name, Debbie Benest, and then on Instagram and Facebook it is Blue Sky Health Coaching.
Okay.
And I do have a website as well, which is just www.blueskyhealthcoach.co.uk.
All right. And I will put all of that in the description for those of you who want to connect with Debbie and learn more. So again, thank you, Debbie, for your time. And thank you to everybody who has watched this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like the episode. Give us a comment, drop it in, and let us know what your favorite part of the episode was. And until the next time, I'll see ya. Bye.
Thank you for having me.